What happens when Hollywood's biggest cowboy trades his saddle for a soldier's uniform? For over 3 decades, John Wayne didn't just play heroes of the Old West, he led men into battle on screen, but how much of that bravery was rooted in real grit, and how much was pure movie magic? From the Pacific to the plains of Texas, some of his performances felt ripped from history, and others were pure patriotic fantasy. Let's find out which war roles rang true and which felt too polished to believe. Number 15. The Green Berets, 1968. John Wayne's only Vietnam-era war film was meant to be his bold statement about American courage, but it ended up feeling more like a glossy brochure than a battlefield reality. Directed and co-produced by Wayne himself, The Green Berets follows Colonel Mike Kirby, leading his team through jungle ambushes and political tension. On paper, it sounded like a powerful look at modern warfare. On screen, it became one of his most debated performances. Shot largely in Georgia's Fort Benning instead of Southeast Asia, the movie avoided the grit and confusion of real combat and instead leaned into patriotic speeches and clean-cut heroism. Critics called it old-fashioned even when it premiered, saying it felt like a 50s war film dressed in 60s camouflage. The dialogue is straight from the recruiting poster school of screenwriting, earnest, loud, and neatly wrapped up with victory and valor. Still, it's impossible to deny the film's ambition. Wayne wanted to counter what he saw as negativity towards soldiers returning home, and his heart was clearly in the right place. The cinematography, particularly the twilight sequences, remains stunning. But realism? Not so much. The explosions look choreographed, the pacing feels safe, and the emotion never quite lands in the mud. As a piece of patriotic cinema, The Green Berets is fascinating. As a reflection of what real soldiers endured, it's a Hollywood mirage, an echo of old war myths fighting to survive in a new era of uncertainty. Number 14. Back to Bataan, 1945. Filmed just as World War II was ending, Back to Bataan carries the raw optimism of victory without the weight of realism. John Wayne plays Colonel Joseph Madden, an American officer organizing resistance forces against the Japanese occupation of the Philippines. The movie was rushed into production to rally morale, and it shows it's as much propaganda as it is narrative. Director Edward Dmytryk infuses the film with relentless energy and patriotic fire, but it doesn't leave much room for human doubt or quiet authenticity. Wayne's character is all determination and square-jawed resolve, with little vulnerability beneath the surface. The real Bataan Death March, one of the war's most tragic events, is touched upon only briefly before the film shifts into heroics and explosions. Still, for its time, Back to Bataan struck the right emotional chord. Audiences in 1945 didn't need realism, they needed reassurance. The real resistance fighters in the Philippines were still fresh in memory, and the film celebrated them, even if it simplified their struggle. What saves it from being a total relic is Wayne's charisma. His performance, while clean and stylized, carries authority. You believe he's the man people would follow into danger even if you don't quite believe the movie's overly tidy version of the war. In the end, Back to Bataan is less a portrait of conflict and more a patriotic mural, bright, stirring, and untouched by dirt. It captures the spirit of the time, but not the texture of the truth. Number 13. They Were Expendable, 1945. Now we're getting closer to something genuine. They Were Expendable, directed by the legendary John Ford, strips away some of the flag-waving and shows a more grounded vision of World War II. Wayne plays Lieutenant Rusty Ryan, a motor torpedo boat officer stationed in the Philippines during the war's early days. Here, Wayne isn't the invincible cowboy soldier audiences expected. He's frustrated, humbled, and deeply human. The story focuses on men sent on missions knowing they'll probably be sacrificed for strategy, hence the title. Ford, who had seen real wartime service filming documentaries, brought that perspective to every frame. The pacing is patient, the tone somber, and the camaraderie feels lived in rather than scripted. It's not free from Hollywood polish. No John Wayne movie ever is, but They Were Expendable carries emotional authenticity. The battle scenes are chaotic yet restrained, showing confusion more than glory. Wayne's chemistry with Robert Montgomery, who actually served in the Navy, gives the film a credibility boost few other war movies of the era achieved. Unlike Back to Bataan, this one doesn't end in sweeping triumph. It ends with acceptance, the quiet dignity of those who know their duty and fate. That maturity makes They Were Expendable one of Wayne's most underrated war portrayals. It's not loud, it's not perfect, but it's one of the rare times Wayne let the war itself, not his persona, take center stage. Number 12. Flying Tigers, 1942. Before America entered World War II, Flying Tigers hit theaters, giving audiences a look at American pilots defending China against invasion. John Wayne plays Jim Gordon, the stern leader of a squadron of mercenary flyers. Released months after Pearl Harbor, the film served as instant inspiration, a cinematic rallying cry for unity and courage. The aerial scenes, filmed with miniature models and stock footage, thrilled audiences. For 1942, it looked groundbreaking. The dogfights roared across the screen, and Wayne's performance brought commanding gravitas to every briefing and cockpit close up. But realism? Let's just say it's more adrenaline than authenticity. The real Flying Tigers were rough, disorganized, and improvisational traits you won't find in the film's clean-cut version. The movie skips over exhaustion, fear, or the mental toll of endless missions. Instead, it celebrates victory after victory, fueled by patriotic speeches and swelling music. Even the technical details, like aircraft behavior, were often stylized for spectacle rather than accuracy. Still, Flying Tigers worked wonders for morale. It gave audiences heroes who looked calm under pressure when the world outside was anything but. And Wayne, despite having never served, exuded that steady presence viewers needed. In hindsight, the movie's lack of realism is part of its charm. It's a time capsule, a fantasy of confidence made at a time when confidence was desperately needed. If you're looking for truth, it's not here. But if you're looking for the moment John Wayne learned to command the skies, Flying Tigers is where it all began. Number 11. The Fighting Seabees, 1944. Now this one's fascinating, part history, part Hollywood invention. The Fighting Seabees is based on the real-life naval construction battalions that built airfields and bases in combat zones. John Wayne stars as Wedge Donovan, a hot-tempered construction boss who transforms his crew into battle-ready engineers after tragedy strikes. It's classic Wayne, rugged, stubborn, and eventually redeemed through courage. What makes it stand out is its semi-honest look at the logistics of war. You see bulldozers, cranes, and sweat replacing rifles and metals. The movie shines when it shows men solving problems with tools instead of fists. That focus on the builders of victory was rare for the era and gives the Fighting Seabees a refreshing twist. But make no mistake, this is still wartime Hollywood. The story simplifies conflict, and emotional arcs come neatly packaged. Real Seabees were known for grueling conditions, long days, and constant danger, which the film only hints at between heroic montages. Still, Wayne injects conviction into every line. His transformation from foreman to leader feels believable, like a working man answering a bigger call. The supporting cast, including Susan Hayward, adds heart to what could have been a purely mechanical movie. As realism goes, it's halfway there. The technical aspects are surprisingly faithful thanks to Navy cooperation, but the tone is pure cinematic bravado. Yet that's part of its legacy. It reminds us that behind every soldier's story are those who built the ground they stood on. The Fighting Seabees may not get dirty enough to be real, but it does something almost as rare. It celebrates the builders behind the battle. Number 10. In Harm's Way, 1965. By the mid-60s, John Wayne was no longer just a movie star, he was an institution. And In Harm's Way felt like the kind of film only an icon could headline. Directed by Otto Preminger, it's a sweeping naval epic that follows Admiral Rock Torrey, played by Wayne as he faces moral and strategic chaos in the Pacific after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The film was made during a time when audiences were ready for more honest depictions of war, tired of tidy victories and square-jawed slogans. Preminger delivered exactly that. His direction is patient and deliberately adult, tackling not just military maneuvers, but also the psychological toll of command. Wayne's Tory isn't an idealized hero. He's a tired, flawed man trying to steer both his fleet and his conscience through the fog of conflict. This version of Wayne is fascinating. He's still firm and unshakable, but there's melancholy in his eyes. You can feel the weight of every decision, every loss. The movie also benefits from a stellar cast: Kirk Douglas, Patricia Neal, and Henry Fonda, who help anchor the drama in human reality. Where In Harm's Way really earns its realism points is in its tone. It's less about triumph and more about endurance. The action is slow-burning and grounded, the visuals stark instead of glamorous. Even the dialogue has a quiet authenticity. People talk like professionals doing their jobs, not actors reciting speeches. For once, Wayne wasn't playing a symbol, he was playing a man. And that humanity makes In Harm's Way one of his most believable portrayals. It's not perfect, but it's the closest John Wayne ever came to being outgunned by his own humanity, and that's what makes it resonate. Number 9. Sands of Iwo Jima, 1949. If you ask any John Wayne fan to name his most famous war movie, this is the one. Sands of Iwo Jima isn't just a film, it's practically part of American folklore. Wayne plays Sergeant John Stryker, a hard-nosed Marine tasked with molding a group of recruits into a fighting unit. It's one of his most commanding performances and, in many ways, his most emotional. The film uses real Marines, authentic gear, and even real footage from the Battle of Iwo Jima. That alone gives it a weight few war films of its time could match. You can practically smell the dirt and sweat in every frame. But beyond the visuals, it's the character work that hits hardest. Stryker is tough, yes, but not invincible. He's lonely, haunted, and deeply flawed, a rare vulnerability for a Wayne character. Director Alan Dwan keeps the tone honest. The camaraderie feels earned, not scripted, and the climactic scenes carry a surprising sense of loss. The film doesn't sugarcoat the cost of duty. It also marked one of the first times Wayne showed genuine fragility, giving the audience a glimpse behind his mythic armor. Despite being made only a few years after the real battle, Sands of Iwo Jima avoids becoming propaganda. It respects the men who served without romanticizing the ordeal. That combination of grit, authenticity, and heart is why it still feels real decades later. In the long line of Wayne's war portrayals, Sands of Iwo Jima stands as a turning point the moment the Duke stopped acting like a symbol and started acting like a man who carried ghosts home from war. Number 8. Operation Pacific, 1951. Submarines are an unusual setting for a John Wayne movie, but Operation Pacific makes them work beautifully. Here, Wayne plays Lieutenant Commander Duke Gifford, a stoic, skilled officer navigating both underwater warfare and the emotional turmoil of reconciling with his estranged wife. It's part romance, part war drama, and surprisingly full of real detail. The U.S. Navy lent actual submarines and technical advisors for the film, giving it an edge of authenticity that most early 50s war movies lacked. The diving sequences, sonar operations, and torpedo procedures were remarkably accurate for their time. You can tell the filmmakers cared about getting the mechanics right, but what makes the film stand out isn't just the naval realism, it's the emotional one. Wayne's character is competent but human, balancing duty with regret. The story moves slower than most war adventures, but it earns that pace with believable stakes. When the action hits, it's tense without being over the top. The dialogue even carries a bit of melancholy, showing that victory at sea isn't just about survival, it's about living with the things you can't change. Wayne sells that inner conflict perfectly. There's a softness to him here that rarely surfaces elsewhere. While Operation Pacific doesn't hit the brutal realism of modern submarine films, it's remarkably grounded for its time. It captures the claustrophobia, the discipline, and the quiet terror of underwater missions. And in doing so, it shows a John Wayne who could lead without shouting, steady, calm, and utterly believable. Number 7. The Wings of Eagles, 1957. Not many people realize this is based on a true story. The Wings of Eagles tells the life of naval aviator Frank "Spig" Weed, an officer turned screenwriter after a devastating injury left him paralyzed. Directed by John Ford, this film blends humor, sorrow, and realism in a way that feels deeply personal for both Wayne and Ford. Wayne's portrayal of Weed is unlike his usual soldiers. He's not commanding an army, he's wrestling with his own limitations. After the accident, Weed's struggle to recover and find purpose is portrayed with quiet dignity, not melodrama. Wayne plays it with restraint, showing vulnerability without ever begging for sympathy. The film's realism doesn't come from explosions or gunfire, it comes from emotion. It's about recovery, friendship, and the unseen battles fought long after the war ends. Ford fills the movie with his trademark sentimentality, but there's truth beneath the sentiment. You can feel the director's affection for Wed, who was his friend in real life. The movie also celebrates the birth of naval aviation, with several flying sequences that remain visually striking even by today's standards. Yet the real triumph is emotional. When Wayne, as Weed, learns to walk again, it's more powerful than any battle scene he ever shot. The Wings of Eagles might not be as action-packed as Wayne's other war films, but it's arguably more authentic. It shows courage of a different kind, the kind that doesn't come from fighting others, but from fighting to live again. Number 6. The Longest Day, 1962. Few war movies capture scale like The Longest Day. This D-Day epic boasts one of the largest casts in film history, with John Wayne among legends like Henry Fonda, Richard Burton, and Robert Mitchum. Wayne plays Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Vandervoort, a paratroop commander trying to hold his ground during the invasion of Normandy. The film's realism is off the charts for its time. Shot in black and white for a documentary feel, it used thousands of extras, real military consultants, and even several veterans of the actual invasion. Each segment focuses on different perspectives: French resistance, British troops, German officers, creating a panoramic view of the chaos. Wayne, despite limited screen time, commands attention. He's older here, gruffer and less theatrical than usual. You can see fatigue in his posture and hear it in his voice, a commander who knows too well what's coming. There's a grounded authenticity to his performance that fits perfectly within the film's semi-documentary tone. Unlike earlier war films, The Longest Day doesn't glorify conflict. It portrays D-Day as confusion, courage, and sheer survival. Even when Wayne delivers orders, there's none of the polished Hollywood confidence, it's all urgency and focus. This is the movie that proved Wayne could adapt to realism without losing presence. Surrounded by an all-star ensemble, he doesn't dominate the screen. He blends in, and that's what makes his performance powerful. It's the rare John Wayne war role where the heroism feels shared, not centered. By the time the credits roll, you feel exhausted, respectful, and oddly grateful, a perfect mirror of the film's spirit. The Longest Day isn't just real, it's monumental. Number 5. The Alamo, 1960. When John Wayne made The Alamo, he wasn't just the star, he was the director, producer, and beating heart of the entire project. This was his dream movie, his grand tribute to courage and sacrifice. But while The Alamo looks epic with its sweeping desert vistas and massive battle scenes, its realism is another story altogether. Set during the legendary standoff between Texan defenders and Mexican forces, the film follows Davy Crockett, played by Wayne, as he joins the doomed garrison at the mission. Everything about it feels monumental: the towering sets built in Texas, the hundreds of extras, and Wayne's booming, noble speeches. But the tone is pure myth-making. Instead of gritty accuracy, The Alamo offers a romanticized version of history, complete with rousing music and gallant last stands. Yet there's an undeniable sincerity in Wayne's vision. He wanted to remind Americans of what he saw as timeless bravery, the idea of ordinary people standing firm when the odds are impossible. And that's where a sliver of realism shines through. The exhaustion, the camaraderie, and the final moments of hopeless resolve do carry emotional truth, even if the details are Hollywood polished. Critics at the time were divided. Some admired its grandeur, others called it propaganda dressed in buckskin. But love it or not, the Alamo was made with every ounce of Wayne's passion. The film's biggest flaw, its overly heroic tone, is also its greatest strength. It reveals the kind of man Wayne wanted to be remembered as. So, while the Alamo may not show war as it truly is, it shows what war means to those who need their legends. It's not realism, it's reverence, shot in Technicolor and stitched together with pride. Number 4. The Horse Soldiers, 1959. Directed by John Ford, The Horse Soldiers takes Wayne back to the Civil War, but this time it's not about grand speeches or patriotic fireworks. It's about grit, exhaustion, and the ugly logistics of a raid behind enemy lines. Wayne plays Colonel John Marlowe, a Union officer tasked with leading cavalry through Confederate territory to destroy vital supply routes. Unlike many war movies of its time, The Horse Soldiers isn't interested in romanticizing battle. Ford strips away the glory and gives us mud, sweat, and tension. Wayne's Marlowe is no symbol of perfection. He's weary, irritable, and constantly questioning his orders. His foil is William Holden's character, a skeptical army doctor who challenges Marlowe's single-minded determination. The push and pull between them gives the movie its edge and its realism. What really grounds The Horse Soldiers are the quiet details, the heat shimmering over the Louisiana swamps, the fear in the soldiers' faces as they cross enemy lines, the unpredictability of small skirmishes. There's a palpable sense of danger and fatigue. You can tell Ford, who had experienced real wartime filmmaking, wanted to show the burden of command rather than just its authority. Even the ending avoids cheap heroics. The mission ends in success, but not triumph. The soldiers look spent, not victorious. Wayne's final expression, tired, reflective, and silently proud, feels more human than most of his war roles combined. It may not be as celebrated as The Searchers or Stagecoach, but The Horse Soldiers stands as one of Wayne's most authentic depictions of leadership under pressure. It's war without glamour, just dust, duty, and doubt. Number 3. The Sea Chase, 1955. In The Sea Chase, John Wayne plays Captain Karl Ehrlich, a German sea officer at the start of World War II who refuses to serve under a corrupt regime. Forced to flee Allied pursuers across the ocean, Ehrlich becomes one of Wayne's most complex characters, a man caught between duty, decency, and survival. The setup alone is unusual for Wayne. He's not the traditional hero waving a flag. Instead, he's a seaman of principle navigating moral gray zones, hunted by both enemies and conscience. The film's realism lies less in spectacle and more in tension, the exhaustion of life at sea, the claustrophobia of confinement, and the unrelenting watchfulness that defines every decision. Director John Farrow shot much of it on actual ships in rough waters, giving the movie an immersive physical authenticity. The creaking decks, the salt spray, the howling storms, they all feel real. And Wayne, often accused of playing himself in uniform, genuinely disappears into the role. He's reserved, calculating, and uncharacteristically introspective. There's also Lana Turner, who adds complexity as the conflicted companion aboard his vessel. Their interactions bring humanity to a story that could have easily turned into a propaganda piece. Instead, The Sea Chase explores morality amid chaos, a rarity for Wayne's filmography. It may lack the explosive battles audiences expected, but it compensates with atmosphere and quiet realism. The Sea Chase shows Wayne at his most restrained and layered, trading hero speeches for heavy silences. It's a reminder that even legends can surprise you, and that sometimes the most honest war stories happen far from the battlefield. Number 2. The Flying Leathernecks, 1951. Before jet fighters, before CGI explosions, there was The Flying Leathernecks, a World War II aviation drama that captured the strain of command like few others. John Wayne stars as Major Dan Kirby, a Marine Corps squadron leader juggling impossible missions and emotional burnout. This isn't the kind of movie where the hero just barks orders and wins. Kirby is haunted by every casualty, every impossible choice. Wayne delivers a performance filled with tension and restraint. His jaw might be set, but his eyes tell a story of guilt and fatigue. Director Nicholas Ray, known for his sharp emotional storytelling, digs deep into the moral complexity of leadership. The flying sequences were shot with real planes and actual pilots, giving them a visceral realism rare for the time. When the aircraft dive or stall, it's not Hollywood trickery, it's documented danger. Ray also focuses on the quieter moments. Pilots writing letters, joking nervously, or hiding their fear before takeoff. Those glimpses of humanity hit harder than any dogfight. The movie's strength is its honesty. It doesn't glamorize loss or simplify duty. Kirby's biggest battle isn't in the sky, it's inside himself, as he tries to balance compassion with discipline. The script even questions his methods, letting audiences see the emotional fallout of every decision. For a 50s studio production, The Flying Leathernecks feels startlingly real. It respects the men who flew without turning them into cartoons of bravery. Wayne's commanding presence anchors it all, but this time he doesn't stand above his men. He stands among them. Number 1. The Long Voyage Home, 1940. Before John Wayne became the ultimate Hollywood soldier, he gave one of his most quietly authentic performances in The Long Voyage Home, a film that feels less like a war adventure and more like a poem about survival. Directed by John Ford and based on plays by Eugene O'Neill, it follows a crew of merchant seamen navigating dangerous waters during the early days of World War II. Wayne plays Ole Olsen, a gentle, soft-spoken Swede yearning to return home far from the chaos of war. It's one of his most uncharacteristic roles, no swagger, no commanding bark, just a man caught in circumstances bigger than himself. And that's what makes it so real. The film focuses on exhaustion, homesickness, and the small rituals sailors use to keep fear at bay. Shot in haunting black and white, Ford's cinematography turns fog, moonlight, and sea spray into something almost tactile. You can feel the dampness, the cold, and the tension between shipmates as rumors of spies and sabotage ripple through the crew. There are no grand speeches here, no cinematic heroics, just tired men facing danger with quiet dignity. Wayne's performance is restrained and deeply human. You sense his longing for home in every scene, his weariness in every line of dialogue. For an actor known for towering bravado, it's a startlingly vulnerable turn and arguably one of his most realistic. The Long Voyage Home doesn't celebrate war, it endures it. It shows that courage isn't always loud, it's often just the will to keep moving forward through fear and uncertainty. If realism is the measure, this film captures it not through spectacle, but through silence, shadows, and the human face of endurance. So there you have it. 15 John Wayne war roles ranked by how real they felt. From flag-waving legend to raw humanity, his journey across decades of cinema mirrored America's own evolving view of heroism. Some of his battles were waged in history books, others on sound stages, but all of them shaped his legacy. Which one do you think felt most authentic? Drop your answer below and don't forget to subscribe for more classic film deep dives.